rising energy costs and global instability, which are said to be casting a long shadow over Europe's hospitality sector. Industry leaders from across the EU have been meeting in Cork, where they're warning the challenges facing tourism have reached a tipping point, with fuel prices surging and tensions in the Middle East disrupting travel and supply chains. Businesses say they are under unprecedented strain. The chief executive of the Irish Hotels Federation is Paul Gallagher, who says more than 10 million livelihoods across the continent now hang in the balance.
In Ireland, hospitality supports 245,000 jobs. That's 1 in every 9 jobs in the economy is connected with tourism and hospitality. Across Europe, there are 2 million SME businesses in tourism supporting 10 million jobs right across Europe. So it is a substantial industry. And the headwinds, the Commission understands the pressure we're under and are keeping a watchful brief on it.
Paul Gallagher, CEO of the Irish Hotels Federation there, and joining me on the line to chat about this are Sean Lally, Chair of the Clare Tourism Advisory Forum, co-owner of Hotel Woodstock, and the co-owner of the Shannon Springs Hotel, Dermot Kelly. And a very good morning to both of you, and thanks for being with us. And I suppose, Sean, a lot of these issues, be it energy disruptions, concerns around energy prices, instability in the Middle East, the broader economic headwinds, I mean, we're all affected by those to some degree, which obviously would mean the tourism and hotel hospitality sector is no different. But just how serious is the situation from your perspective? I don't think we have Sean on the line. Sean, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah. It's a very serious issue, Alan, and somehow over the last number of years, Ireland is now 42% higher than the average European country to live in. We're second only to Denmark, and I've been quoting this in a number of interviews over the last 2 years, and I don't think we as a country put enough focus onto how we actually ended up in this situation. And if you take electricity alone, 1980, we were the second lowest country in terms of cost of electricity in 1980, second only to Greece. Now we're the highest. So if you just look at that, how did we get in this situation? Because electricity and energy feeds into everything we do on a daily basis. Everything we cook, everything we put on the plate, it has a huge impact on all our deliveries and everything. And costs like electricity have just gone out of control. And then when you have an international situation like going on at the moment in the Middle East, it's out of our control. And, that's where it's unfortunate. When you look at this, I know you covered in the news earlier, so much wind and wave opportunity around our island. It's times like this now, you would need to be in charge of that. And I don't think we're putting enough resources into the wind and wave energy side of it, where we would actually control our own energy and produce our own energy. Whereas now we're price takers when it comes to energy, and we just have to take it. It's not as if we can turn off the lights or turn off the heating, or we need these fuels to be able to cook the food, to put it on the table.
And it isn't, I guess, just energy costs, Dermot, operating costs in general. How is it from your perspective at the Shannon Springs Hotel? And I guess just on the energy, with hotels being energy intensive, how exposed do you feel the sector is to these rising prices?
Good morning, Alan. I suppose, look, our industry, as Sean said, is one of the most intensive industries when it comes to energy usage. So everything has a knock-on effect. We've seen the last number of years energy go, say it doubled in the early 20s, and it never really came back down in the cost. And now it's starting to rise again. I suppose the ongoing Iranian crisis, that's really having an impact on the wider economy, and with increased fuel costs, it's putting additional pressure on people that supply us as well. So everything has a knock-on effect by the time it gets to the kitchen, and then there's only we haven't really passed on any charge as of yet, even though we have seen considerable things increase. So food costs go up, but I mean it is a major challenge, and I suppose once, as Sean said, the longer term plan would be to have alternatives in place, but in the meantime, we're caught. And I suppose the other issue then is with fuel, and I suppose we're lucky in such a way that none of the European airports have said at the moment that they're going to be caught for fuel for probably a good number of weeks, and this will help, I suppose, once it starts flowing again, and we shouldn't really see an impact like at the moment.
Yeah, and hopefully not. And I suppose, Sean, we were joined recently by the travel expert, Owen Corry, to talk about the story that Europe only had about 6 weeks of jet fuel left. And it was good to get someone with expertise in the area on, because Owen highlighted that generally is the case, because, there wouldn't be, I suppose, facilities to store a significant amount of fuel for airports and airlines and so on. So they tend not to have more than that in reserves at the best of times. Owen felt it wouldn't be a massive concern in terms of lots of flights being cancelled and worst case scenarios. But from your perspective, would you share his confidence, or perhaps this global uncertainty, where the fuel prices and the Middle East is impacting it? Are you already seeing an impact in terms of booking patterns and consumer confidence?
I can't say I've seen a slowdown in the US market just yet, but it's still very, very hard to know. There's still, I suppose, the US market in the past would have been booking nearly 12 months out. Now that market isn't the same. It's gone very short run in, and while a lot of them do book 12 months out, there's a lot more that are booking within 2 and 3 months. So that's the market you actually worry about. Is that going to come through? And it could be a challenge, because remember, it's not just Ireland that's facing this. This is all over the world. Everyone is in the same situation. They're all dealing with huge fuel increases. So, their spending money as well is being impacted. And if you look at it in the last week, Aer Lingus cancelled 500 flights, or combined flights. I think, is it May, I'm hearing in terms of there may be surcharges on fuel for aircraft, because they had hedged the fuel up until May. So if we see surcharges going on the cost of flights, it could make flights very expensive, and it could be the tipping point between, do they take a holiday to Ireland or do they not? So it is at a very, very critical situation. And remember, every country all over the world is in the same situation. So they're all going to be fighting for these tourists to come to Italy, or come to Germany, or come to France, or whatever. So they're going to be chasing our pie as well, be it for the European or the US tourists. So yeah, it is at a tipping point, to be fair. It is very, very challenging, but we are resilient. We will survive. And I think if you wear the local hat here in Clare, we are so lucky to have such a strong tourism setup in the county. If it is a thing that the international market goes down, I firmly believe we're in a good position to pick up on the whole domestic market, because of what we have in our doorstep and our access in terms of motorways to the key populated areas. And Irish people may not go abroad as well as much as they would before, for the exact same reasons, in terms of if there was a surcharge on flights, it could be the tipping point for them to holiday at home, and we may end up like being the year after COVID, when there was a huge surge in Irish tourism locally. So I suppose it's very uncertain at the moment, and one thing that isn't good in terms of tourism is uncertainty.
Yeah, Dermot, do you share Sean's confidence in the domestic market as something that the sector can rely on in Clare should the international market be impacted? And would that mean then that having to make difficult decisions around pricing, staffing or services can be staved off for quite some time?
Yes, definitely. I suppose we, as Sean said, we're in a good position. Like, we're on the Wild Atlantic Way. So we have an awful lot to offer in the whole region that people can come and experience. And I mean, for people then, if they want to get the best value, I would encourage them to look on our websites and book direct, because they're the ones that have the best deals available. Like, you could have considerable savings between our own website and say a booking.com. You could be saving €30 a night on average. If you book direct, there will be, like, I'd say there'll be a good lot of opportunity for people to holiday at home if they wish,
We heard, Sean, earlier on, Paul Gallagher, the chief exec of the Irish Hotels Federation, highlighting just how many jobs and livelihoods depend on the sector. He said 245,000 jobs in Ireland are tied to hospitality. It could actually be as high as 270,000. Is that something, if the industry is looking for the government to support them or to offer further assistance, perhaps in October's budget on the 7th of October for budget 2027, is that something that is going to have to be stressed? Well over 250,000 jobs are supported by this sector, and we need further assistance.
Well, it's 1 in 9 in Ireland, so, it's a huge, huge part of the Irish economy. I think it's very, very important. I think the government do need to look at tourism. We are one of those industries that are very, very focused on energy, and we've no choice but to use it. We're a huge employer, and I suppose we get into every nook and cranny of rural Ireland. In a lot of cases, a local hotel is the engine room of the local economy, because it's putting students through college. It's a career for a lot of people. And it's bringing a lot of business into a region that's having an impact on kind of local bars and restaurants, taxis, shops, with the spending power that's out there. So hospitality is extremely, extremely important from that perspective. Yes, the government does need to look at tourism issues, and one obvious one that I spoke about recently on the radio is the government are in power now over 2 years. There is still a cap on Dublin Airport. And a lot of times I find that guests from the US fly into Dublin and fly out of Shannon. So we have missed out on whatever additional airlines and routes could have gone into Dublin Airport over the last number of years there, because the more that comes into Ireland, the more opportunity we have them of flying out of Shannon. So we've missed out on that. Yes, I know they're committed to it, and as recently as a few weeks ago, I saw different associations going into the government, and still talking and canvassing about lifting the cap from Dublin Airport. We're gone past that. It's taking too long, and we're too slow to react to obvious decisions that need to be made that would have positive impacts for our tourism and industry in the country, and that's one that sticks out a mile for me.
Dermot, in terms of the budget, what would you be looking for? And do you think the government will be as likely to assist the sector as they were last October? They will point at the reduction in the VAT rate that's going to kick in from the start of July, and I suppose being mindful of having to look after the so-called squeeze middle, and they have been mentioning, it has been mentioned that with the two support packages, energy support packages of over €750 million, that perhaps there won't be as much wriggle room in the budget. Would you be confident that the sector, whatever asks they have, that the government will exceed them and help you?
Yes, I suppose, look, when it comes to the support packages, the VAT, yes, it is reducing in July, but that was put in place to help businesses that we were already struggling with the increased energy costs pre this.
But it did, sorry to get across there, but it did take quite an effort from your sector to even get the government to bring that back in. To go to them and say we want it cut even further might be a battle too far.
Yeah, well, I suppose I suppose it depends on how the situation goes with the increased cost later on this year. Maybe they'll have to look at the energy supports as an overall package. That could be something that might be explored. That would be one of the ones. I suppose as energy is one of our main costs. I mean, like as Sean said, I suppose in Clare alone, there's over 12,500 people employed in our sector. And I mean, between Shannon Springs and Timbergate, we have 150 people employed. And we are a big employer, so government has to recognise that, 1 in 9 jobs outside of Dublin are in our sector. So it has a big effect on the wider economy,
Okay, well, look, we do have to leave it there. I've no doubt we'll be talking to both of you and others from the sector in Clare between now and October's budget. But for the moment, my thanks to Dermot Kelly there, the co-owner of the Shannon Springs Hotel, and also the co-owner of Hotel Woodstock and chair of the Clare Tourism Advisory Forum, Sean Lally, with us